Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Download, where we bring you discussion and analysis from a Catholic perspective. Today's Wednesday, June 7th, 2023. I'm Brad Eli here with my co-host Simon Rafe and Christine Niles. And over there in the fourth chair, Nick Wiley. Hey, Nick.
Hey, Brad.
Persecution. Nowadays, it seems like everyone claims they're being persecuted. Everyone seems to think claiming martyr status is a way of garnering support in the public eye. But who's really being persecuted in the United States today? Well, to start things off, we'll be talking with one of our producers, Joe Enders, host of Red Top Report, about a pro-gay group acting like the boy who cried wolf. Joe, tell us more about this.
Yeah, Brad, the Human Rights Campaign, or HRC, you might know that group as the equal sign people, put out a statement yesterday, Tuesday, June 6th, declaring a state of emergency and also issuing a, quote, guidebook to ensure safety for LGBTQ+, and sometimes Y, whatever that is, residents and travelers. This so-called safety alert was accompanied by a report from the HRC documenting state laws it claims are anti-LGBT. What kinds of laws are they talking about? Well, it's stuff like banning biological males from girls' sports, or regulating the curriculum for young children in public schools, or banning doctors from mutilating the private parts of gender-confused boys and girls. And it's actually kind of funny because I actually have the report right in front of me right now. You can see the little equal sign right over here. And when I opened up the report, the first thing that really stood out to me was a chart that they have. And this chart it's a snapshot of anti-LGBTQ+ bills introduced this year, and you can see it right there. Now, what I find so hilarious about this chart is that it starts in 2015, and it doesn't include any of the years before that. And I think this kind of serves as kind of a broader discussion on just how much things have changed since 2015. If people aren't aware of that, that's when the Supreme Court decided Obergefell versus Hodges, and that was the federalization of gay marriage, I would say, in the United States of America, legalizing it across all 50 states. A lot of people tend to forget about this. Barack Obama in 2008 was obviously lying, but defending traditional marriage because the American people were, for the most part, opposed to it. Now they're saying there's all this new anti-LGBT legislation coming out today, but in reality it's kind of being supported in some capacity by every single party. But the bills that they're talking about are curriculum censorship, pronouns, forcible outing, bathrooms, medical care bans, sports bans, and they just total it all as well and show each one in 2023. Now, these are all regulations designed to protect kids from being propagandized by LGBT issues. It's nothing to do with care. It's nothing to do with regulating sports in any capacity. It's not about destroying anything. It's not anti anything. It's simply about not propagandizing kids or sexualizing them from a very young age. So this is why as many people on the right will say they're trying to stop child grooming. We're trying to not encourage children to be homosexual from a very young age. And they're actively trying to promote it. So this isn't really a crisis. I mean, do we really think that the LGBT is in crisis mode right now, that they're under attack? Let me know when the gay people and trans people are put on an FBI watch list for the sole purpose of being gay or trans, kind of like Catholics who attend the traditional Latin Mass are.
Yeah, those are good points, Joe, because the fact is no one's actually going after the adult LGBT people who are drafting this document. They're just saying keep your ideology out of the classroom where our kids are attending. Keep our kids from being mutilated because of your ideology. It was scary just recently in Florida. The judge said no, that ban on mutilating children, and I'm going to block that you can actually perform surgery on children. And Florida seemed one of the places where it's actually ground zero for all this stuff, all the legislation to be coming. So nobody is attacking the homosexuals, LGBTQ, or however you identify yourself. It's just don't bring that to children who are struggling with all these ideologies already circulating in their head.
Yeah, and I want to kind of highlight this point too. I really don't feel that we need to be relying on Republicans to be at the forefront of these issues. Yes, they're going to push legislation that attacks kids. Yes, that makes them better than the Democrats. Yes, you should probably vote for them over Democrats. I don't see any other reason, unless there's like a special case, where the Republican is actually worse than the Democrat on these issues. I can't think of even an example off the top of my head. But this idea that Republicans are going to protect this, I mean, guys, I want to get real with everybody on the panel right now. How many more transgenders need to appear on Fox News before you get it? How many more drag queens need to be invited to the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, if you know it as that? How many more times do we have to have so-called conservative internet personalities like Dave Rubin buying Build-A-Babies and Rent-A-Wombs before we get it? They are not opposing this stuff in its totality. They don't understand the genesis of the problem, and I think it's time to really admit that what conservatism is, as it's defined today, as simply being basically liberalism before Barack Obama, it's dead. It's a dead conservation of nothing, and we need to kind of think about how we can move forward from it. Do we need to bury it? It's a real question.
Yeah, don't have those answers right now, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, so I'm intrigued by this HRC, which has the same initials as Hillary Rodham Clinton. I'm sure that's just accidental. But this HRC has issued a state of emergency, declared a state of emergency, and it's a guidebook to ensure safety for LGBTQ plus residents and travelers. So presumably this is this kind of similar to it used to be you go to Mexico, you don't drink the water, et cetera, et cetera. But as they might have now, if you were traveling to the Ukraine, obviously be careful because you might get shot. Are they issuing travelers guidelines for LGBTQ people to going to other countries? Because obviously there are countries such as Iran, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Nigeria, places like that, where it's not just illegal to be gay, but they will kill you for it.
Yeah, well, of course not, because we wouldn't want to be Islamophobic, now would we? And this is just generally the policy of the Democrats, is basically, unless it's destroying a Western nation, we don't really want to be involved in it that much. Now, there's obviously some nuance to that. If you look at overpopulation, for example, or something like that, they are pushing that on the third world, trying to give them birth control, trying to give them abortion and things like that to limit the amount of children they have. But they haven't moved to homosexuality yet. If you'll notice, they'll have the updated gay pride flag hanging above the embassy at the Vatican, but you will see no such thing at the Vatican offices in some African countries or some Middle Eastern countries. So, I think it's just a repeat of that exact same idea again.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sitting down. Let's talk with Joe. We'll see you around. And the left is crying wolf because a few states here and there are pushing back on this insanity, and they're complaining about persecution. But we as Catholics have actual, real persecution to talk about. Thank you, Joe, for bringing with us. That persecution, that word being used here in this way, shape, or form, we're just trying to protect the kids in this state from being indoctrinated and mutilated and having to compete with males when they're females in sports. That's all just fair play.
It is, and it's not just there that we're being attacked. It's also the pro-life pregnancy centers as well.
Real persecution going on.
Exactly. Actual violence, firebombing, vandalisms, breaking in, destroying things. Hundreds of these acts committed against crisis pregnancy centers, pro-life clinics all over the country over the past year or so, ever since the passage of Dobbs v. Jackson, which overruled Roe v. Wade. And of course, Jane's Revenge, it's this terrorist group that has taken responsibility for most of these attacks. Where are all the prosecutions of this? And what's interesting is we have a story coming out of Nebraska. We don't know why this is coming 6 months late, because the incident happened in December 3rd, but better late than never, I guess. But there's a reward of up to $15,000 being offered for information about the source of a Jane's Revenge threat in Nebraska. It was notes were left at the St. John Paul II Newman Center at University of Nebraska, as well as at Christ Community Church, threatening violence if the abortion ban was passed. And they said, we're going to use AR-14 rifles. It was signed, Sincerely, Jane's Revenge.
AR-14s?
It says AR-14 here. That's what the article said.
That's in a quote, so there you go.
Yeah.
Jane's Revenge doesn't know their guns.
Not surprising. But this was right before the 2023 session in the Nebraska legislature where they passed a 12-week ban on abortion. The FBI says it's looking for the source. They said I want to actually say, describe the car so people out there, if they could spot it and report it. It's a 1998 to 2004 tan or silver Chevrolet S10 pickup truck. And they're asking you to either call them or go to tips.fbi.gov. But again, why did it take 6 months for the FBI to come out, to talk about this? 6 months, really? And this is just one that I know of, whereas how many pro-life Catholics have been prosecuted harshly by the FBI and DHS?
Oh, immediately, and run all the way through the ringer and through the book thrown at them, and then lose the case at the end of it all because they don't have a case against these people. Yeah, where's all the arrests? Where's all the bodies? Where's all the, the FBI are busy out there cracking down on traditional Catholics and naming church militants in their reports.
naming church militants in their reports and so forth. And, look, I mean, I think, the corruption of the FBI has been well established. That we've had multiple reports from multiple angles, the whole failure to investigate the Hunter Biden story, the investigating, things that Donald Trump did when, Democrats did the same things, and there's a disparity there. I mean, I think that's what I would really want to look at. That obviously we can sit here and you can discuss the notion of persecution and the actual events themselves that are persecutory. So you talk about firebombing churches and attacking people and beating up people who are sidewalk counseling, etc. So it's just a long list, bricks through the windows, tearing down statues, etc., etc. And all of those, very, very true. There's been a number of interesting things. The FBI, here we are again, they track hate crimes. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing and tangential discussion. There's a whole question of should a thing be designated to be a hate crime or not, or is just like the actual mechanics of the crime itself, is that enough to prosecute? Do we come along and say, well, you did this bad thing, but you did it for a really bad reason, so we're going to layer additional punishments on it? There's a difference of opinion. But in tracking hate crimes, they say anti-Catholic hate crimes make up 6.1%, okay, of the related hate crimes in 2021. And this would mean the FBI have got roughly about 100 hate crimes, anti-Catholic hate crimes they've done. Other people, Catholic Vote, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, and the Religious Freedom Institute have tracked, between kind of about, 175 to about, 300 and some anti-Catholic incidents, because there's different ways to track it and what is it. But here's the interesting thing. How many of these actually get prosecuted as hate crimes? How many of them get prosecuted as felonies? How many of them actually get prosecuted at all? How many of them get put down to misdemeanors, or it's, you get time served, or you've got a plea deal? And the answer is, there's a lot of these things that get pushed down. That itself is a form of persecution. If we assume the FBI aren't lying, haha, funny, I've got other jokes I can tell. But if we assume the FBI aren't lying, 6.1% of the hate crimes incidents in the United States were directed towards Catholics. Catholics constitute maybe about a quarter. So it's like, okay, so we're actually getting attacked less often, but why do you keep downgrading the crimes? That itself is a form of persecution. That is a form of government persecution. That comes from the justice system itself. That is worse than some numpty throwing a brick through your window. When the government says, you know what, it's free to do, you're going to see that 6.1
Well, that's downgrade, even if you get, but where's all the arrests to even downgrade? I mean, I don't see all these parades of all these people being arrested and run through the public eye and saying, well, we're going to take their trial, and, oh, they got downgraded. It's non-existent. They don't even find these people.
I do have a few examples of the Biden administration and Democrat DAs actually downgrading some of these cases of individuals who were actually convicted of hate crimes against the Catholic Church or against religious communities, but then being given a slap on the wrist. So here, for instance, just last month, here in Michigan, a man was sentenced to only community service after he literally shot an elderly pro-life woman. He just got community service. Think of if it was the other way around and a pro-lifer shot an Antifa activist or whatever. I mean, he'd be facing murder charges. Then we have another case of St. Junipero Serra's statue out in San Francisco, Archdiocese of San Francisco. Archbishop Corleone was extremely upset about this. It was clearly a hate crime directed against the Catholic Church. They gave him a slap on the wrist. They downgraded his charges from a felony to a misdemeanor. And Archbishop Corleone put out a very long statement. I'm just going to quote part of it here. He says, "This course of action would not have been taken with anyone else. In fact, this crime likely would have been charged as a hate crime, at least if it were perpetrated against certain other minority and vulnerable groups of people." In Washington state, you had the DOJ just last month recommend 0 jail time for a transgender person who vandalized church property and then physically assaulted a church employee. No jail time whatsoever. But look at the way that they treat pro-lifers, all right? We have a case in Alexandria, Virginia. A pro-lifer was sentenced to 30 days in jail simply for handing out roses on the property of an abortion mill. That's all the person did. They handed out roses. It was a simple trespass charge, which is normally just a misdemeanor, really shouldn't require any sort of jail time, 30 days in jail. Meanwhile, a transgender can physically assault a pro-lifer, but no jail time.
Yeah,
it's like in
ridiculous.
England with the whole thought
The
crime.
whole thought crime.
The thought, to literally sit out, not even to say anything, hand out anything, to stand there and pray.
Yep.
You go to jail.
Yep. Yeah, literal thought crime. Yes, 1984 was a warning, not a handbook. You know, it's the thing. Interestingly, so one of the things that will come with, obviously, with regard to this, and one of the things that people will come and say is they'll say, oh, yeah, you say, it would have been different, but you know what? Where is the different example? You know, and that's what people will say as their defense in this. Okay, so I now have these 2 cases here. This is in Massachusetts. So a Massachusetts man pleaded guilty to intentionally setting fire to a Catholic church. Okay, did a bunch of damage, $10,000 in damage. He got 3 years in prison. The state prosecutors recommended a maximum of 4, and they didn't charge him with a hate crime. So that is, you have set fire to a place of religious worship. 3 years, 4 recommended, you got 3, not a hate crime. Later that same week, the Biden Justice Department had a guilty plea. They were going around, we've got a guilty plea for federal charges of a hate crime and arson against a man who had intentionally set fire to a synagogue. Okay, so the difference at this point is, it's like one is Catholic Church and one is not a Catholic Church. You know, I don't think we need to make a case that, you know, it's because it was Jewish or something like that. No, it's because it was Catholic. The Catholics got off lightly, not the man who set fire to the Jewish synagogue was punished particularly harshly. He faces up to 20 years in prison at his sentencing later this month. So they're recommending 20 years. That is a federal crime. He's going there because he set fire to a synagogue. But apparently, yeah, if you want to burn down a place of worship, apparently don't go Jewish, go Catholic. That's your lesson for today.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean that same report that you have, when it comes to the hate crimes, it says that over 50% are against Jewish, and then it has like 11.6 Sikh, 9.6 Islamic, then the 6.1 Catholic. But it's like I just would love to know what the definition is, because I mean most of these, it says that over 60% are like these single issues that, you know, there was nothing else there. It's like this single time issue, blah blah blah. A lot of them are like simple battery, or then it gets to a little less of like aggravated assault. And so it's all these things, and I would love to know how they classify. How can you prove that something was this big hate crime?
Yeah,
all these statistics seem very manipulated.
Did you beat up Mr. Goldstein because he was Jewish, or did you beat up Mr. Goldstein because he stole your parking spot?
Yeah.
You know, and you're just a violent and terrible person. Yeah.
When I was back in law school, hate crimes were a fairly new thing. They were just beginning to be introduced, and there was a lot of debate among students whether or not we supported these sorts of things. And I never supported hate crimes, because really what they are is they're thought crimes, because you have to go into what is your personal thinking, your subjective thinking, and your intention when you set fire to this building. So did you set fire to it simply because, you know, you just like to burn things and therefore it's not a hate crime? Or did you have the intention because I hate, you know, Jews, and this is a Jewish synagogue, and therefore that's why, well then, that's a hate crime, and we're going to add, you know, 5 years to your penalty. But the problem is, for one, it only focuses on protected classes, and then two, which now, as we know, is being extended to transgenders and things like that. Whereas maybe you could go beat up a fat person because you just really hate fat people. You're just biased against fat people. But to the government, it's like, okay, well, that's not a hate crime. Doesn't matter.
It's not a protected class.
It's ridiculous.
It's not a protected class yet.
It will be soon.
And this is the ridiculous that we are looking at the creation of these protected classes, and it does become ridiculous because it's like, okay, everything suddenly becomes a hate crime. I remember when this first came out. Obviously, I wasn't in school at the time, but I remember seeing, because I think the hate crime legislation in the UK and the US were kind of advancing at the same time. So this notion, and my father was discussing it with me, and he was like, it makes no sense. If you commit a crime against somebody, you at that moment you hate them. If you punch them in the face,
yes,
you hate them. What do they think hate means? And it's like, that's actually a very legitimate point. When you discuss this notion, but again, if you're going to have hate crimes, you have to apply it universally. And you know what? If someone's coming along and saying, I'm splashing red paint on a Catholic statue and tearing it down, if I'm spray painting, if abortions aren't safe, you aren't either, if I'm shooting pro-lifers, if I'm beating up people who are street evangelizing, okay, those are all directly related to the thing that they're doing at the time, which is evangelizing, which is a Catholic virtue and a Catholic act. These are anti-Catholic steps you're taking.
And justice is supposed to be blind. The government is supposed to apply justice impartially and fairly, and clearly that's not what's happening with the Biden administration. So, okay, we may disagree with hate crimes. I may hate hate crimes, whatever, but the fact is they're the law, and if they're the law, they must be applied equally on both sides. And clearly that's not happening. If y'all remember, a few months ago, U.S. AG Merrick Garland was raked over the coals. He was torched in a Senate committee session after the way that a SWAT team descended on the family of Mark Houck, pro-life father of 8, Mark Houck, absolutely terrified the children. They're all screaming. He's taken in, and what was his crime? He was trying to protect his young son from a rabid pro-abortionist that was walking up to his son and screaming in his face constantly. And so he, as a father, what does he do? He protects his son by pushing the guy back. And within 1 hour of the federal jury trial, he's cleared, completely, totally cleared. And so they call in Merrick Garland, and they absolutely rake him over the coals and ask, why is it that you use this incredible show of force towards a Catholic father and family, and yet all these hundreds of Jane's revenge, crimes are not being prosecuted? And Garland, his only response was, well, it's hard because they do things at night and we don't have photographs, and it's just kind of hard to track down. Give me a break.
I will personally buy you a set of night vision goggles, Merrick.
Yeah, you were the FBI. You have all these people everywhere that are trained to find terrorists across. That they can find terrorists across the world, but they can't find out who these people are who are probably on internet blogs talking about all this. They're probably not very hard to find. If you say, "Hey, I want to join you guys and do this with you," they're probably easy to go out there and find. It's the fact that we just won't. They have absolutely no interest at all in doing it. It's not their prerogative. They really don't care about us. And most of these people, it's crazy because a lot of these people that come up are Catholics, and a lot of these times it's like, oh, we say it all the time when we're reporting on different things. This person who identifies as a Catholic is doing this very anti-Catholic thing, and I've never understood that. It's like, people, how do you care so much about other people's heritage and identifications, and the one that you identify as you seemingly care none for?
They're deliberately targeting us, deliberately. If you all recall, just a few weeks ago, the Department of Homeland Security was outed because as part of their training manual to spot so-called far-right domestic terrorists, they had, as part of their training, hypothetical profiles of potential domestic terrorists on the right. One of the hypothetical profiles, I kid you not, is a picture of an average middle-aged mom who drives a minivan, takes her kids to soccer, attends church events, and expresses a deep concern for the welfare of the unborn. That is literally one of their profiles for a domestic far-right terrorist. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I was like, this can't be real. This must be a parody. This must be like the Onion or the Bee or something. And it's not. They are targeting us.
Is that why you sold your minivan, and so you don't want to be targeted?
I still have my
all the other things, check. I would say the hate crimes in this country go back to bake me the cake. After Obergefell and gay marriage, and now I want you to decorate, I want you to support my wedding, my gay marriage, and if you don't do that, and who was being targeted? It wasn't the Muslim bakery, it was the Christian bakeries, the Jack Phillips out there. who they say, I want you to bake me the cake specifically because you're Christian, because you have morals, and you won't, and I'm going to wring you through the ringer and take you all the way to the Supreme Court multiple times, and you're going to be the one. So these people who are actually targeted there because of their Christian values and put into that spot where all these guys, Jack Phillips, all these guys who were saying, you have to bake me the cake, all of them would say, you're homosexual, you can come in, I'm not going to ask, and even if you are, that's fine. Sit down, here's a cup of coffee, do you want some cookies, would you like to buy in my store? Absolutely 110%, all of them are in that way. You want me to participate in your wedding by making you a special cake and decorating it all? Well, there's free speech involved in all that, and you can't compel my speech, I'm sorry. And they're like, oh no, you hate us, you're targeting us, blah, blah, blah. I don't agree with homosexuality, nothing against you personally. Well, they take it personally. And that's where this human rights campaign says, if you are not in the tank with my ideology, you hate me. Can't we have a little discourse on what we might agree and not agree on as far as ideology without taking it so personally? But no, they can't. Because that's one thing about the homosexual crowd, they're always playing the victim card. Yeah. Always. That's part of the psychology of the homosexual.
It's not just about tolerance, as they keep saying. We just want to be tolerated. No, it's about imposing. And the Jack Phillips case, he had always served homosexuals. Like he had never had a problem baking cakes for homosexuals. He had never discriminated against them. But he was clearly targeted by this couple. They knew this is a test case. We need to get this into the courts so that we can make him an example for the entire country. They targeted him deliberately, and as you mentioned, free speech a core part of free speech is not just that you get to say what you want to say and it's protected, but that you can't be forced to say something that violates your conscience and your beliefs.
Yeah, and one of the bigger things is, okay, even though, he wins in the end, Mark Houck wins in the end, it's the intimidation factor of, you know what, we can do this at any moment, we can bust up in there, take you out, and then you're going to go to trial and all these things for months and months, years and years. We're going to put you through all this legal hell. We're going to do all this stuff. And now it's got all the other business owners, pro-lifers, all thinking in the back of their head, is this event right here really worth it? Is this worth it? Because even if I come out, I'm not to blame at all. I come out, I win the case in the end. It's still years of stress and finances and all these different things.
Well, there's a couple of things with that. I mean, first as well, if you're going to kick down somebody's door with a hydraulic ram and you're going to come in with guys in hard shell body armor carrying guns, it's like, okay, accidents happen and police invariably have qualified immunity. So you know what? You might win the case, but you win it in the ground. And that happens, that how many times do these things happen? It's like, oh, we accidentally shot the wrong guy, or hey, we didn't need to shoot him, but I thought he was going for a gun, and all this sort of thing. So yeah, there is that adds into that very real fear of, is this worth it? Having said all that, there is an event that is worth it, and everybody needs to be down and get in on this. Okay, so this is the month of the Sacred Heart, or if you are, as I've said before, a degenerate pervert, it is Pride Month. And in the middle of the month of the Sacred Heart, they have the Feast of the Sacred Heart. We spoke about it on this very stage. It is on the Friday the 16th of June this year. Now, what the degenerate perverts are doing is they've got a special Pride event, a Pride Night event at the Los Angeles Dodgers Stadium on Friday the 16th, and they're inviting the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence to get an award. Now, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, again, we discussed them too, but they're basically like this drag troupe that kind of goes around, prances about in dresses, and mocks Catholicism. They've got a lot of stuff that really explicitly mocks Catholicism, not violent persecution, but really, it's very mockery of Catholicism. There's a kind of persecution there. We and a bunch of other good Catholic organizations are having a prayerful pilgrimage from the Cathedral of Our Lady, Queen of Angels in Los Angeles to Dodger Stadium. So be there at Our Lady, Queen of Angels, wearing red in honor of the Sacred Heart at 4:30 p.m. on the 16th of June, and there will be a prayerful procession to Dodger Stadium. Loads of people involved. I think Bishop Strickland is going to be talking there. I think Jesse Romero, the great Jesse Romero, you interview him all the time. You're always talking with Jesse. He's a good lad. We having that on there. If you want more information about it, we're obviously part of the organizing group, but if you want more information about it, you can go to Church churchmilitant.com/Dodgers. There's a link all over the website. There's so many links on the website. I've put them all there myself. And you can get all of the information on the places to go. That is a thing that everyone should do. To your point, is this worth it? Yes, it is. Yes, absolutely, 100% it's worth it, because if you don't push back, and let's be honest right now, this is going to happen with a bunch of other Catholics in daylight. You know what? The LAPD is going to be there. They do not want, problems on their watch, so it's going to be all, as safe as a protest can be. This will be it. You know what? This is worth it. If you are in California, if you can get there, be there, be part of it. If you're not, yeah, you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
Well, the pressure's on right now, because you've seen it. I mean, yeah, I've seen pictures on Twitter all these days of people who have had their Pride logo June 1st, and then within the next couple of days, they revert back to their original logo. They're feeling some pressure, but you can't let that momentum die. You can't let them see that, you know what, okay, it was a little smoke and mirrors. They put up a fight for a few days, a week, whatever. They have to see some real demonstration to where this isn't a thought next year, to where it's like, okay, crap, we really can't risk it this year. Like we see all these people losing all this money. We cannot risk it this year. We can be, we can love our pride. We can love all the gay people in our organization and all that, but we can't afford to publicly promote it with our logos in our stores, all that. So this is that demonstration that will show the MLB especially and other sports teams, hey, you can't go this far.
Catholics and all Christians need to be pushing back extremely hard against this and making this big public show. But also, I cannot emphasize enough how vile, how filthy, how blasphemous the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence are. There are videos going viral on Twitter, which are way too horrendous to show on this show, but I will just describe to you one of them. They make a regular thing of mocking Christ and his crucifixion and his scourging and all of that in their little Pride events. So, for instance, there's one video of the man who's supposed to be Christ crucified on the cross. He's just there in a loincloth. And you've got another man in a loincloth, a stripper, a gay stripper, literally dancing lasciviously all around this fake Jesus, climbing on the cross, wrapping his legs around this man's face and his torso and climbing down him, and simulating sex acts, and then pole dancing right next. I mean, it's the most horrific, blasphemous thing, and they all laugh about it, and they do this all the time. And that's their entire raison d'etre. That is their reason for being. It's to mock the Catholic Church. And for the LA Dodgers to think that that's okay, and we're just going to sit back and accept it? No way. We need to make a strong showing. And for those who don't live in LA or you're not there and you can't go, first of all, share the link with your family and friends, encourage them to go. But if you yourself can't go, spend an hour in adoration. Make reparation for the outrages and offenses committed against the Sacred Heart of Jesus. We've got to make reparation. They are outrageous.
Yeah, when all this comes down after the protests and everything, they're going to say, well, you're hating me because I have a homosexual tendency, because I am homosexually orientated. No, because you're blasphemous, because you're mocking the Catholic Church, because you're mocking God, and trying also to pervert our children. This goes back to all the drag queen story hours, and you're starting to say, well, I don't want my kids going to those events. I don't want those events in my schools. I don't want that indoctrination in my schools. You want to be your own proclivity, your own lifestyle. That's, I guess, kind of like Trump. He was like, well, people, if they want to get married and gay and that, they do their own thing. But he would also still stand up for, you don't have to bake the cake. You don't have to have your kids indoctrinated. You have the right to say no to having, this around your own children and that. So he did stand up for that. And he kept things separated. I guess I'm sort of in that camp, too, where I would say, you guys want to do this on your own separate time? That's what you always push for, toleration. You want to do that? I believe in my understanding of religion and God and everything else that's going to take you to hell. I will pray for you. Hopefully it doesn't go there. But evangelize. But you want to do that, that's your decision. But when you want to bring that into the classroom and pervert all the kids and bring this whole generation in and adopt children and bring them into that type of lifestyle and pervert and mock God and make a big scene out of all that, that's not, and want everybody to participate in your pronouns and have you participate in taking first place in sports against women who are not biological males and all that, that's way beyond what you first started with when you said, just tolerate me being homosexual. Oh, my goodness.
But you can't have both those things, because there's no history or anything like that without a worldview, without a philosophy. And so you can't even, there's no such thing as just like basic historical facts outside of a worldview context. And so with the critical race theory, with the whole LGBTQ history, whatever, like those all come from a way of seeing the world. Like, how did the world change? Why were things done a certain way? And so you can't avoid that. You can't avoid religion. It's impossible. That's why they have this whole controversy in Oklahoma right now with this first publicly funded religious charter school. And one of the guy that I really like on Twitter, Jeremy Wayne Tate, he talks about, he released a series of tweets where he was saying that, yeah, religion is inescapable, basically, where there's going to be a religion preached some kind of way. And if you're really about, you know, funding all these different things, then yes, this is okay too, because they're going to get it some kind of way. And so this is, it fits in, because there is a state religion being pushed right now throughout all schools. And so this at least gives like an equal playing field of, okay, we're all getting funded, but we all get to say our different worldview, because there's going to be that thing. Like you see all the public schools right now, there's still videos going around everywhere where the kids come in and there's teachers dressed in rainbow different stuff, and all the kids are going in. They know no better, and these are state funded schools, and they're just, you know, practicing their little version of religion. So we should get that equal opportunity as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact is, a lot of these kids are struggling with all this. It's hip and cool, and if you're not questioning and you're not, you know, maybe a little in a trans, you know, you're transitioning or whatever, you're just not with it. You're not cool, and you don't understand us, and then all the psychological peer pressure and all this type of stuff. Those are the kids that do not need all of these people coming in and telling them this type of worldview. But if you want to go to a worldview, you know, how many layers up the chain, all the way to, say, Our Lady of Fatima in 1917, saying the final attack, Satan's final attack will be on the family. Okay, we know this. We've reported on this. So you actually know that there was a supernatural battle going on, and they see it over the family. And this is actually taking place before our very eyes. And some of the final stages of this are going right after the kids to this pederasty and trying to groom the kids and trying to get them. That's why most of these 75 laws that they're worried about, Human Rights Campaign, are all targeting just safeguarding children. Nothing to do about them and their own proclivities whatsoever.
Yeah, here are what these laws are, what they list them as. The curriculum censorship, so that's no porn in books. That's literally what all those are.
In schools.
Yeah, no books with porn in them.
In school libraries.
Yeah, they still aren't banning a lot of the bad things that could be in books. It's just the fact that you can't have these sexually explicit images and telling them how to, like, do anal sex. You can't do that.
You can do it on Amazon, just can't do it in the school classroom.
The other one, pronouns. You have to call everyone by whatever they want to be called by. There's one of the other sets of laws. The other one, forcible outings. Forcible outings is saying that when a kid basically tells a teacher that they might be gay or trans or something, that the teacher must inform the parents. This is somehow anti-LGBT, because it should stay with the teacher. The teacher should be the safeguarded, trusted one to be able to handle that with the child. They shouldn't have to tell their parents. That's another anti-LGBT law. The other one, bathrooms. Oh, the boys and girls have to have separate bathrooms. Medical care bans. Medical care bans is literally just you can't chop a child up. It's not saying, oh, they have a disease, you can't treat that disease. No, you just can't chop a child up. All the other medical stuff is still on the table.
They had that law in Florida, and a judge just overruled that and said, no, you can chop children.
Yeah, so the preliminary injunction for these three or four different families that they're going to let happen on those kids now, because the judge is calling this bigotry. It's all bigotry. And then the last one, the sports bans. Oh, boys and girls have to play against sports with their sex. So those are the anti-LGBT laws that they're claiming are hateful, and that we're trying to kill them, and that we're going after them, and we want them eradicated.
So that's the thing that really bothers me, because they're using kids as their political weapons. They're actually using them as tools in this whole political game. In the fact of trying to ease their own conscience or trying to get people all indoctrinated, they're actually using children in all of this. And that, to me, is just beyond the pale, that you would actually use them as pawns in your game to get what you want politically.
Yeah, and what I noticed, too, about all these so-called anti-LGBTQ laws, pretty much almost every single one of those are really focused on the transgender issue. Because right now, if anybody's been following this on social media, there is a growing divide between the lesbian, gay, bisexual community and then the transgender community, and you have this big movement called LGB without the T, which is really trending on Twitter. And these are like the gays against groomers, that sort of thing, where they're like, look, we want nothing to do with the whole transgender issue. We completely disagree with them. They are grooming our children. They're harming our children. We don't agree with this at all. Now, I might disagree with the homosexual lifestyle. Obviously, I do. But what I'm showing is there is this growing divide and animosity between the two. And it's interesting that HRC focuses on exclusively transgender issues.
Well, because you've won the gay issues. That's the thing. You've won the gay issues. In order to be relevant as a kind of an activism organization, you've got to keep pushing the envelope. You can't sit there and go, hey, let's celebrate the fact that 8 years ago we got what we wanted. Woo! I mean, it's like that's not a thing that you build an activism on. You talk about LGBT without the T. There's also another group, which is a group of lesbians, and I have a lot of sympathy for lesbians because we find the same kind of people attractive. But it's the joke. It's like I'm in touch with my inner woman, and I'm happy to announce that she is a lesbian. But they have a thing called Get the L Out, and the whole thing was this. This isn't just about the transgender concern, because there is a great concern from lesbians within the LGBT community that they are being persecuted by transgender. So let me just kind of run this through you. It's complicated. You may wish to get a bit of paper and a pen. So you have got a dude. He is a man, and he is a biological man. And he decides that he is a woman, but he is a lesbian. So just so we know, he is a biological man and he is a lesbian. He has nothing particularly done to himself except maybe he shaves and puts on a dress. I'm trying to be delicate about it. And he then decides that he wishes to go and have sex with a lesbian because he is a lesbian woman so far as he is concerned, and the biological female lesbian is like, whoa, no, I do not want to have sex with a dude because I am, in fact, as we previously discussed, an inhabitant of the island of Sapphos. So this is now referred to as, and I jest ye not, this is genital fetishism. So if you are a lesbian woman who does not wish to have sex with an intact man, which is essentially just heterosexuality with extra steps, you are a genital fetishist and you are persecuted and driven out and cast out where there is wailing and gnashing of teeth. The other thing that is happening for the lesbians is that they are seeing that all of the energy, all of the everything is actually going towards the male homosexuals, that they're just getting kind of pushed away and shoved out. And so it's not just simply like, hey, we want the transgenders out of our group. It's like, we want out. We lesbians want out of this whole thing because we're getting persecuted left, right, and center, which is like, oh, okay.
Well, it's interesting how many lesbians and radical feminists totally oppose the whole transgender movement, particularly in women's sports, because they feel like women are being erased. They're being completely erased. Their identities are being erased. And really, astute people have pointed out that this is just the domination of male patriarchy, but in under another guise. They're men being promoted over women, biological men being promoted over women. Women and their desires and their motive, everything, their concerns are being completely erased in favor of these biological men. You see, of course, in sports, these men, these biological males are absolutely dominating female sports. They're always winning first place, and these poor women, biological women who've trained so hard and they've given their lives, they sacrificed so much for years to be able to compete, they're left at second, third, fourth place because they simply cannot compete with the male physique. And it is utterly unfair. And what's so cowardly is the males in athletics, athletic leadership, in the politicians not standing up for these women.
Yeah, it's very true that the Republican side is not the great savior of the whole thing because they don't have any better formation than the left a lot of times to see through all this stuff. And where's the leadership, of course, in the Catholic Church? Where are they coming out and saying enough is enough, this is crazy, you guys all have to realize there's male and female and that's all there is. And then Pope Francis is a mixed bag. He will say a child deserves a mother and a father. He said that several times, and yet he comes out and blesses a gay couple. But then he'll have a letter from the CDF saying in March of 2022 that you can't do that in Germany. But then he excoriates the guy that wrote the letter and all. So it's just a mixed bag all over the place. So we're not getting any solid leadership. But going back to the global view, we know in 1917, Our Lady of Fatima coming, that this is a supernatural battle and it's going to be taking place in the family. But Satan has to have kind of like hands-on. There has to be some incarnate aspect to that. And there was communism spreading its airs. And if you go back to some of when they broke into the Eastern Bloc countries after the Berlin Wall came down, and they've got these working files of how they want to, what they call demoralize the West. And a lot of this has to be hypersexualized and bring in homosexuality and perversities and all that. Why? To target the family. So if you're looking at bringing down the family, it was I'd like to get a Chinese colonel back in the early 70s, not to target China or anything, but they said you're never going to bring down the West without bringing down the family. They know that. They just see that. They just think that way. They understand that. So all of this stuff, while we're working on all this and we're disagreeing and we can't figure it out, and all the future of our, and everybody's so effeminate, you can't have a society of effeminate men defending the country, really? And when all of that's brewing in this country, then go ahead and start World War, because we don't have our, what together to do anything except just boil in our own stew here. So we have to see above this. It's not just the horizontal relationships here that we're just coming apart at the seams in the country, and then Satan's cheering that, and the communists and globalists and the Soros out there who's funding a lot of this stuff is all cheering that. But it just makes you easy pickings for the next things to happen when we are talking about, it seems like every day, the near possibility of going to war with China and the Middle East and Russia and who knows who else. And we're not in any position to do that whatsoever, because we can't even figure out are we male or female, let alone stand up and defend the country. So there are real dangers with this, not just for the family, but for our country, society, global population in general.
Yeah, and you talk about attacks on the family, kind of on a related note, because really at the end of the day, if you take the 30,000-foot view, there's a spiritual reality happening here. And Satan has his plan, and he's implementing that plan marvelously through unwitting individuals who just think that they're trying to be compassionate, but they're really taking part in his plan of destroying the family, thus destroying society. What's really interesting is I recently read, as many of you know, I interview exorcists. I read a lot on that, and I have a great deal of respect for the ministry of exorcism. There was one exorcist in Mexico who was saying that not only is there a rise in the need for exorcisms, because so much, there's a rise in the occult and so many possessions, things like that, and people are also falling away from the faith and opening themselves up to these dark forces. He was saying specifically that there's the rise in power of the demon Asmodeus. And as you know, that's the demon who is named in the book of Tobias. He's the one who killed the husbands of Sarah before Tobias. And this exorcist said that this demon specifically specializes in targeting the family. And you see that happening everywhere. His work is, obviously it's moving apace. And so we have to remember there are spiritual realities behind all of this evil happening, which means we need to pray. We need to all stay in a state of grace and do battle, spiritual battle against this. Some
of the audience there might find it a little bit beyond the pale to say, wait a minute, this is such a regimented thing. This whole demonic attack is so regimented. And in Mystical City of God, we sell the book in our bookstore, and it's the most has the most approbations than any other book out there, in print. Popes and everybody else have put it in, and why it's not a bestseller today is beyond me. But anyway, in there, Mary Vergretta talks about how the fall happened, and then that the devil himself was the one that came up with 7 capital sins. That was not God's doing. And there was a principal demon. So you have anger, envy, lust, and a principal demon that was principal noted for, how he was in the original fall of the devil, the angelic fall, and how they distinguished themselves. Some very powerful demon was put in charge of each one of the 7 capital sins to tempt mankind. So it was very regimented from the very beginning. Satan's kind of and that's his crown. His 7 horns are those 7 principal demons. They have the crowns of each one on, and those are the 7 ways that he's attacking everybody. So it's very regimented. It's very structured. It has all very laid out from the beginning of mankind and how the devil was going to approach this battle. So yeah, it is very laid out. And what the exorcists are finding out is how regimented that is, and they're just getting indications from the various interactions that they're having with the devil and confirming that type of. So people need to take this battle seriously, and I think the intermediary thing is not getting enough press time. We have the people at the very bottom that are, you know, the human rights campaign. But who organized that? And who organizes all the way between there? And you have the satanic mind with the devils in charge, channeling to different people, and also this whole communist thing, and the globalist thing, and the Illuminati, and you can go on to all the conspiracy theories you want. But these people are actually targeting, they look at the world as a chess piece. And this is how we want to put our money, like we talked about Soros getting the 50 AGs in different counties and the states where you want to do the protests. They're very regimented in all that, and everything is so structured. We can't even agree on what time to have coffee tomorrow. You know, it's pathetic. Yeah. Great that we're doing something with the Dodgers, you know, protest. It's a wonderful thing, and also targeting Target. And also targeting Budweiser. Those things have been taking off. But man, it's hard to get the whole Republican side to agree on what to go after and how and all of this.
I think the talking about this as an attack on the family, I think, you know, the answer to this is not glamorous, but it does come from the family. So every single individual person out there listening to this, every single Catholic, every single person has somebody that they're going to encounter who is going to be influenced by this, who is going to be touched by this, who needs them to respond and provide an authentic answer of truth to it. So you're going to know somebody in your friends or family or whatever who's going to come out as gay, who's going to say that they're transgender, something like that. And you've got to be ready with a response. And that response doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, this full-blown, you know, here's a great, you know, massive deconstructed argument starting from natural law and the whole thing as to why this. No, it can just be as much as just kind of saying, okay, I don't agree with this. I don't agree. I'm drawing a line in the sand. I don't agree that you are a girl. You are a boy. You've always been a boy. You always will be a boy. I don't agree with this idea that you're a girl. And it's just that ability to do that. We have to do this. Mike Voris gave this great speech out in Boise, Idaho, which is probably the best thing to happen to Idaho in centuries. But it's a great speech, and he really goes after this whole notion of you've got to stand up and do stuff. Apparently, afterwards, there were a bunch of people coming up to him who were saying things like, hey, you know, yeah, I get it, I agree, but, you know, my son is gay, so I've got a problem. My nephew is transgender, and it's like, you have lost the battle. The moment you're going to go, yeah, I agree, but nothing you say before the word but counts. It's simple as that. You have got to come along to go, you know what, yes, I agree, and this is wrong, and I'm drawing a line in the sand. That's where it happens. All the boycotts, all the marching to Dodger Stadium, all of the everything will not do a lick of good if you can't stick a stake in the ground in your own house.
I don't see why that particular slice of the sexual sin gets a pass. Why do people that have that weakness? I may want to just, you know, swear all the time. I may want to break the third command, just not go to church. I'm a good person. I just don't like all that religious stuff, you know. I call myself a Catholic, and I'm as good as a Catholic, but I just don't go to Mass on. Or, you know, I'm into racism, or I'm into whatever. I just have a proclivity for homicidal tendencies. You know, why does anybody get a pass? Well, everybody has weaknesses, man. And so why do you have a particular group that has a particular weakness and they get a particular pass? You're just sealing their fate. And people out there like Joe Schomburg and others, they're going to say, well, that's a grooming technique. God made you that way. You're this way. Embrace yourself. And that's the way you have to be. You're being locked into a certain lifestyle. I have to identify as that, accept that. The biggest problem the church started doing was saying LGBT people. You know, and actually identifying them that way. Yeah. They did that at the Extraordinary Synod on the Family with the midterm relatio. It just still stuck with me that the homosexuals, you know, have gifts and qualities. Just drove me up the wall. How dare you identify someone with their weakness, with their lowest common denominator, or some sinful tendency, and you're going to say, well, that's you. That's all of you. Only you. That's how you're identified now. Man, that's a bridge too far.
I will tell you how they do it, how they manage to get away with it, because Asmodeus is a better demon than Baal.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Well. Anyway, thanks for joining us for today's episode of The Download. Now, please join us as we finish in prayer, begging Our Lady's intercession for our nation and our church. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae, vita dulcedo et spes nostra salve. A te clamamus exules filii Eve, a te suspiramus gementes et flentes, in hac lacrimarum vale. ea ergo advocata nostra, illos tuos misericordes oculos ad nos converte, et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris tui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende. O clemens, O pia, O dulcis Virgo Maria. Amen.
Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Amen.
Thank you again for joining us for this episode of The Download. We premiere a new episode like this every weekday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. From all of us here at Church Militant, God bless you.